In January of 2025, I was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer. This week marks officially 1 year since I was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer at the age of 31, and I feel like I'm finally ready to share my story. This is going to be part 1. This is going to be how I found out, my diagnosis, and kind of just the beginning of everything. If you are interested in watching part 2, that one will be up shortly. That will be all about my journey over the last year with it and where I'm at now. In advance, thank you so much for watching. Let's get into the video. In January of 2025, I was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer. It had spread to my liver, and I'll give more detail here in a minute, but just to give you a little bit of background information and context, nobody in my family has ever been diagnosed with colorectal cancer. Not on my mom's side, on my dad's side, nobody. And then on top of that, if you ask anyone who knows me, I am a very healthy person. I've been very healthy. I have been active my whole life, played sports, worked out 5-6 days a week for the last umpteenth years. I've counted my macros. I eat very nutritiously. I try to, stay up on my water intake. I count my steps. I'm that kind of person. Like, I've been so healthy. So this came as a complete shock to me, to my loved ones, as you can imagine. So leading up to the diagnosis, initially I was like, I had no symptoms, but when I look back now, I maybe had a few, but nothing that would have sparked a red flag for me. The year prior, I was very fatigued, but I had also gone through some significant life changes at the time and was trying to figure out kind of what was going on with my life. So I kind of figured it was just a depression. But when I look back, I was fatigued, like all day. I would have 9-10 hours of sleep and I would still wake up tired. And so I look back now and I think that was probably part of it. I did also notice my hair falling out about 6 months prior to the diagnosis. But again, I had just had these huge life changes. I figured that it was just a stress response. Again, very healthy. And I can insert some pictures here actually of what I looked like the week before my diagnosis, like how healthy I felt and I looked. The other thing that if I look back at, I could say maybe was a symptom of it was I had inconsistent bloating, but it always kind of went along with where I was in my menstrual cycle. And so I never thought twice about it. It would work itself out, I'd be fine, and then, I'd get to the part of my cycle again and things would change. It was inconsistent, but it was consistent. But it was nothing that was like painful or out of the ordinary. The last thing that I would say is I did experience some night sweats, but again, they were very inconsistent and they went right along with my menstrual cycle. The days leading right up to when I would have my period, I would get these night sweats, and I figured it was just a fluctuation in my hormones. Looking back now though, I would say that I was only experiencing those for maybe about 6 to 9 months prior to my diagnosis, so that probably was from the cancer. But at the time, again, to me it just didn't seem like anything out of the ordinary because it went away and then it came back on time every month. So those were, I would say, would be my symptoms leading up to it. I know that I've gotten that question a lot. But here's how I actually found out what was going on and why I ended up going to get checked out in the first place. So a week before I went to the ER, I had a bowl of ice cream, which maybe I only have that a few times a year. It's not something that I do often. And so I was eating a bowl of ice cream. And I remember after I ate it, I was like, ooh, this is like not sitting well. So I waited out the night into the next day and I still wasn't feeling well. And at that point I could kind of pinpoint exactly where it was bothering me in my digestive system, but it felt like indigestion. Like it felt like I just needed to pass gas that wasn't passing. I wasn't vomiting, there was nothing like that. So again, I gave it a couple days. I ended up going to the gym and working out and thinking, oh, this is just something that needs to move, so let me move my body to try to facilitate that. Drinking lots of water, all the things that you could think to do besides taking medication for it, because I'm also someone who doesn't really take any medication prior to this. So after a few days, this didn't go away, and I ended up feeling in the area, because it was like narrowed down to a specific area where I could feel the discomfort, and I would say that's all it was. It was discomfort. It wasn't painful. And at this point I had had bowel movements. I hadn't thrown up. Like everything was normal besides the discomfort I was feeling. So I was like feeling around there one day and I felt an actual lump, and I was like, this is not normal. But again, I was like, cancer didn't even cross my mind. I was like, there's no reason to think that I have cancer right now. So I gave it a couple more days, and at that point I was texting with one of my best friends who works as a physician assistant in one of my local ERs here, and we were kind of going back and forth, and I'm like, could it be a cyst? Could it be a weird hernia? Like, what else could it be? Because neither of us thought cancer. And after it started to get like a little bit more painful, wasn't going away, I decided to go into the ER when she was working so I could specifically request a CT scan, because I didn't know if another provider would give that to me. And I'm so glad that I did. If you don't know, I am a physician assistant as well, and so I knew I was going to need imaging, and I didn't want to go through the roundabout, like go to the primary care and then get referred to GI and then get referred to like I wanted to go straight to the source. Let's figure out what this is. And I'm grateful that I did, because I think that is part of the reason that I'm still sitting here today. So fast forward, I go into the ER and, you know, we check my labs. My labs are perfect. Mind you, I told you already that the cancer had spread to my liver. Liver markers were completely normal. Everything was normal. If you would have looked at everything on paper, no vomiting, no fever, no change in bowel movements, no blood in my stool, all my labs were normal. Like, I probably would have been sent home had it not been for this being my friend. So we ordered a CT scan, and I will never forget my best friend walking back in to my room, and at this point I was like pacing, because I was starting to get nervous. Like, we hadn't gotten the results back. I think deep down I had a bad feeling, but like logically in my mind I never thought cancer. Anyways, and so she walks back in and her eyes are red rimmed and she's been crying, and I'm like, this isn't good. And she sits down. I sit down on the bed, and she sits down with me, and she grabs my hands and she looks at me and she says, it's gonna be okay. And I'm like, oh my God, what's going on? So then the attending doctor comes in, and he ends up saying, you know, we don't see any lump in your abdomen, any mass in your abdomen, but your liver, there are a lot of lesions in your liver that look like metastatic disease. So we're going to have to do a full workup and figure out where this is coming from. We're going to do a mammogram, a colonoscopy. Let's get a CT of your chest. You know, I'm going to refer you to oncology. And I'm like, hearing the words, right? Oncology, metastatic. I'm like, no. It was a complete shock. But the CT scan showed like upwards of 20 to 30, 2/3 of my liver were covered in lesions that ended up being metastatic tumors. So fast forward to the next day, we had an appointment scheduled right away with oncology, and I just saw kind of like a general oncologist, and she was like, okay, we need to do a couple of things. She's like, I think the very first thing we do though is get a biopsy of one of these lesions of your liver to make sure it's cancer or not. And so we got that set up, and she was like, and in the meantime, I want to refer you to our director of GI oncologist. You'll see him, and then we'll also get an MRI of your abdomen because the CT didn't show anything. Again, fast forward, biopsy came back. I remember looking at it. One of my other friends was visiting, and we were sitting together, and I was like, I'm going to look at the results, because I got the notification on my chart that the results were in from the biopsy. And I'm kind of fast forwarding through some of this. Like, I can talk about what the biopsy was like in more detail and things like that, but I want to keep this kind of concise for now. So anyways, I pull up the results and it says adenocarcinoma, and my heart just drops out of my stomach. And I look at my mom, who's sitting there too, and I was like, it's cancer. And we all just kind of looked at each other like, what? You know, I was terrified that it could be cancer, but I wasn't letting myself even think that. And so when I saw it myself, I was like, okay. I mean, I wasn't like, okay, I was just shocked. So my friend ends up leaving. My whole family, my mom, my sister, my dad, my mom's there, my sister, my dad end up coming over, and we're just all crying together in disbelief, terrified out of our minds. Yeah, one of the worst days of my entire life. So then I think it was the next day I had a follow-up with that GI oncologist, and who is now my oncologist, and I love him so much. Oh my gosh. But anyways, I had a follow-up with him, met with him for the first time, and he was basically like, okay, and we had the MRI results back at that point too, and he was like, okay, we found the lesion or we found the mass in your abdomen with the MRI, but we can't tell where it's coming from exactly. It's kind of right between your stomach and your large intestine. It could be colon, it could be gastric cancer, but obviously the lesions came back as adenocarcinoma. And so he gave me this differential diagnosis of 3 different cancers he thought it could be. This was also so freaking scary. He said, you know, my number 1 thought is that it's gastric cancer. My number 2 thought is pancreatic or biliary, and then my 3rd is colon. Like, I think that's the least likely. And he said that if it's pancreatic and it's adenocarcinoma, which we already knew, then there's nothing we can do. You know, we'll do palliative chemo, but like, I guess adenocarcinoma in the pancreas is just like... So he was like, to figure this out, we need to do a colonoscopy and an endoscopy so that we can figure out where this primary tumor is coming from. And at that point, we had ruled out breast cancer, we had ruled out lung, like we'd ruled out any other cancer. Having a medical background in this instance, I think, helped so much, but also hurt so much, because I know more than a lot of people know going into this. So yeah, it was kind of like bittersweet having that. So before we get the colonoscopy, endoscopy, I remember waking up from it, and oh, they also did an ultrasound of my pancreas when they were in my stomach. So anyways, I remember waking up from it, and my mom was sitting right next to me, and she goes, "It's not pancreatic." And I just started crying. I mean, it was, granted, I was all dried out. They dry you out. They give you meds to dry you out. So I'm like trying to cry, but no tears are coming out. But I was, oh my gosh, the emotion that I felt. And then she had looked at me and she said, "It's colon." And I said, okay. But to me, out of the 3, that was kind of like, okay, I feel like I have the best odds with this given where I was and like how many lesions are in my liver. So the doctor comes in, confirms that with me. Then we go back, see my oncologist, confirm it's colon, and he's like, okay, you know, here's the plan. He's like, we're gonna start chemo. You are not a candidate for surgery at this point because of the amount of liver that was covered. So we're gonna do chemo and kind of see what it does. If we get to surgery, we're looking at a liver transplant because of how much liver is covered. And we're gonna put you on the most aggressive chemo that there is for GI cancers. And you're gonna start in 3 days, I think is what it was. You're gonna get your port placed, and then we're gonna start a day after that is when you're just gonna start chemo. And I think it was like 3 days from when we saw him. So I was like, holy shit, like I'm starting chemo. Like it all happened so fast, you don't have time for it to really register. Like you do and you don't. Obviously I'm terrified, I'm going through all these things, but at the same time, like it's moving so fast. It was a lot. So yeah, I get my port placed, I start chemo, and we're like, let's do this, let's see where it goes. And that is how I was diagnosed with colon cancer. I'm gonna give you just a couple more details, and then I'm gonna end this video and we'll do a part 2. So it was in my transverse colon. So luckily, because of where it was, I didn't need a stoma or a colostomy bag or an ileostomy. The tumor size in my abdomen was like 3 centimeters. They said it was the size of like a golf ball. I will say that at that visit with my oncologist, something that I think helped me so much was, even though I knew deep down that my prognosis was grim, he never said that. And I asked specifically, do not give me any statistics. I didn't remember the statistics specifically from school or anything, so I didn't know. But I knew it wasn't great. Stage 4 cancer, that many lesions in your liver, like I just knew that it wasn't great. And so anyways, what he said to me though, my dad asked specifically, because my dad was in that appointment with us too, and he said to my dad, he said, I know better than to make promises in this field. I can't promise you anything. He said, but I am confident that I can get her into remission. And it's like, that was all I needed to hear. I'm like, okay, we've got a chance. We've got hope. Let's do this. Like, let's go. And yeah, and that's kind of what started my journey. So I will say, just to give you an update where I am right now, I had surgery in the beginning of December. I did not end up needing a liver transplant. That's a whole big story I can't wait to share. I had such a remarkable response to chemo that I only ended up having a couple tiny lesions left in my liver. So they were able to do just resections, which they take out just the little bits in your liver and then leave your liver because your liver regenerates. By the time that we did surgery on my colon, there was no tumor left, so that was completely gone. They still took out the area of the colon that originally had the tumor to make sure obviously there's no like microscopic cancer cells, and then just were able to do an anastomosis, which means they just put it back together. Again, I didn't need a stoma or a colostomy bag, so I'm very, very grateful for that. My pathology report came back from the surgeries showing that most of the lesions that they took out were dead already. There was only a couple that still had viable cancer cells. Since then, there's been some developments. The blood work still shows that there's microscopic cancer floating around in my bloodstream. We're going to get that again. I'm doing cleanup chemo, and again, this is something I'll share kind of in the next coming videos. But so while I was declared NED is what it's called, no evidence of disease, that's since kind of been revoked. Even though there's nothing new on my imaging, there's one little spot on my liver that we actually have to go back in and get, where they're going to have to go in and do a procedure, and then that the blood work shows like a very low amount of microscopic cancer cells floating around. So I'm doing cleanup chemo, is what they call it, and then we'll repeat the blood test, we'll repeat the imaging, all of that. As long as that all stays stable and then the blood test goes to 0, which we're hoping happens, then I will be able to stop treatment and I will be officially cancer-free and in remission and off of treatment, which when I was first diagnosed, I hoped for, but I couldn't imagine. At the time, my doctor was kind of telling me you're indefinitely on chemo for now until we see how things respond. And so to get to this point, I am so grateful. I am so grateful. I am so grateful to God, the universe. I am so grateful to my oncologist, my surgeon, the nursing staff. The people that I have been surrounded with in this journey have made my journey what it is. And I wouldn't be here where I am without them. My family, my friends, you guys have given me life in all of this. And then to my body and to myself, I am so grateful. There are a lot of things I did during this journey that I cannot wait to share that I think made the biggest difference. And I want to be able to help those of you that are also going through your own cancer journeys. And I hope that this gives you hope as well. I don't know what the future looks like. I don't know, where I'll be 2, 5, 10 years from now. I don't know if I'll be cancer free, I don't know right now, and that's okay. I've learned that we never know what's gonna happen, so we just take it a day at a time. And right now I'm in a really good spot, and I'm really grateful, and I feel good, and I'm happy, and I couldn't ask for anything else. So thank you guys so much for watching. I'll catch you in the next video. Bye.